Welcome to Gradcast, the official podcast of the Society of Graduate Students at the University of Western Ontario. Coming to you from the other London, let's start the show.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Gradcast, the official podcast of the Society of Graduate Students at the University of Western Ontario. I'm Tristan Johnson, here with tonight. I am joined by my co-host, Alex Moszczynski.
Hi, everyone.
He's super, super enthusiastic to be here today.
Yes.
And we have an amazing guest today. It was our third guest in our anthropology series we've been doing. Thank you, Christine, for helping us out with that.
Represent, yay.
And anthropologists are doing some really amazing work. And Nathan, I want you to introduce your own research because I don't think I could do it any better than what you're doing. You guys are all working on these really huge problems.
Well, essentially, I'm talking to male sex workers in London, Ontario, and from there, I'm using their stories and going to find out what's going on regarding sex work. Also, just how they actually, I'm going to be analyzing how they talk to me about it, and from there, I can actually learn some pretty interesting things about how they conceptualize their own lives and the culture they live in.
And so what brought you to this extremely specific subset of people?
Well, if you recall, there was the debates about sex work laws, Canada versus Bedford. And a lot of the radio play and media attention was focused on advocates and lumping together of female sex work and human trafficking. And there was some voices missing, and they were the men. And not to mention other genders too. And because every time I kept turning on the radio or whatever during that period, there was nobody talking about it. And also, I thought there was a lot of portrayals of the clients of sex workers as well in a very negative light. And I was curious, is this true? Is it the same experience for men as it is for the women? And what I found out so far it's quite diverse. So,
yeah, I remember this period because it just happened earlier this year. And I remember that not only were sex workers almost 100% portrayed as women, but they were almost 100% portrayed as heterosexual. And the clients were almost always portrayed as men. And also they were people who were coming to it voluntarily, people who were coming to it as an economic thing, and also people who were victims of human trafficking were just lumped in this very amorphous identity. And it definitely needs people to go in and pick apart all of these identities.
Right. And I mean, that's not to negate the people who actually are victims and, have been trafficked. And I mean, some of those are real voices, but what happens is it gets distorted and we ignore so many other experiences that I think there's just a fine line. And especially when they're making laws that are affecting all the people, but based on a select few. One of the stats from 2007 said that 20% of all sex workers in Canada are street workers, and they're the ones who get portrayed the most. But there's all these other venues that people are, for lack of a better term, working, that are ignored.
Yeah, they're it's usually in businesses. There's code words and things and
Yeah, there's each sector has its own way of describing what they're doing.
So I guess one question that comes to mind based on what we've all been saying is, what is the prevailing view then of sex work in general, and why is it that the male sex workers are so underrepresented in their voice in terms of the legislation that's being talked about and put in place?
What was happening in my mind is I'm trying to explain a complicated topic to you in a few words, and I don't think I can do that specifically without overgeneralizing. But one side is there was the feminist sex wars in the 1980s, give or take. And from there, if you familiarize yourself with that history, it's pretty complicated. But there's this one sect of feminism that is about patriarchy, men oppressing women, and from there, they get a lot of the funding. Anybody who takes that approach in advocacy. And the simplest way to put it is, especially locally, they're the ones with the funding. They're the ones who get contacted by the main media. And our local media is actually quite conservative as it is. So they're going to prevail with the norms. Men are ignored because we have different aspects here. We have the that if men are selling, then it totally changes the idea of men oppressing women. Instead, and I found out that we have women and men buying sex from men. That changes things. That changes the whole conversation, and it's too complex for me to, articulate here, but I'm going to obviously have to explore that more in my research. But the conversation changes, and it impacts feminist politics, essentially, and that's a scary way to go.
It's not like as simple as, say, like activists from the 80s, like Catherine McKinnon, for example, would make it out to be.
Exactly.
I imagine that she's done a lot of damage.
I wouldn't say damage, so to speak, but there is a loud body of scholars who are against what she said. So,
Okay, so you plan on talking to this community in London?
Yep, I've talked to 18 male sex workers, and actually, incidentally, one female sex worker, because it was a couple who sold sex independently. So I was like, why not talk to them? So yeah, I've had 19 interviews, and I found out a heck of a lot, and I still have a couple more years to go too. So
I'm really fascinated by anthropological methodology. So I'm just interested, like, how are you approaching them? What are you saying? Like, what kind of questions, and how are you like recording it and everything?
Okay, so do you want me to talk about some recruitment? What I've been doing for that wise? I've started off by going to the obvious websites that actually, like Rentboy and squirt.org and basically escorts for hire type websites, and looking for specific local workers. From there, I wasn't getting as much of a response as I would have liked, so I ended up just putting out flyers in the community. I've gone up and down Oxford Street, and like from Highbury to all the way to Wonderland, just walking, putting up posters, and I've gotten so many responses through that. What happens is they end up contacting me. I do the whole "Are you over 18?" type thing, and then we end up meeting wherever they want. Usually it's the Central Library, because it's kind of a neutral space.
I've noticed that for a lot of things in London.
And it's a familiar area for everybody. And from there, usually, we talk about their childhoods, how they started into the work, their sexuality, what they like and dislike about the job, how they identify. Is this a job for them? Are they suffering? Are they not suffering? What do they need? What do they don't need? I mean, we talk about it all. I mean, it's life stories, right? So I want to contextualize that in these people are people. These are not just, whores on the street kind of concept. And when you talk to them, it's, you can actually place yourself in their shoes a lot of the time. And we kind of co-construct like this this conversation about how they've experienced their lives. And it's not all, I mean, I've had some pretty traumatic stories that I've been told, but I've also had some really, really nifty stories too.
And now I know you're several years from finishing your research, but could you say what kind of insights you've gained about from meeting with all these people?
There's a lot of drug use in London. A lot of them are supporting their addictions. Regardless of whether they're getting help or not, they still need the money for it, and it's quite expensive. Some are doing it for kicks. They just find it to be something erotic. Others are doing it. One guy, he's putting his daughter through college by selling. Others rent. They got kicked out when they were really young. Others, I mean, there's a family history. But yeah, that's some of it.
If you had to place, and this is kind of probably a tricky question, but
yeah,
what would be the most surprising thing to you that you've learned going in, that you maybe had one thought going in and different one now?
It's my own bias, which is I'm gay. So in our, media, there's a lot more discussion about male escorts selling to men. I found out that we have women buying sex, and that totally floored me. I was not expecting that, and there's a lot more of them than I was expecting.
Why do you think that was so surprising to you?
I think it was my own norms of, I think, male and female sexuality, to be honest. Also, the research out there does not talk about women buying sex. Everything that I've read.
I think that's a really interesting finding to stumble upon. I read your article on that, so I figured that would be your answer. But no, that was that. I was surprised by that too, actually, because what I find is that the way things are portrayed in society is that you have a person who is vulnerable, not necessarily doing it because they want to or like it,
right,
and that the prevailing view is that that is a woman, and that men are these people who are keeping those people who have this career down, basically.
Right.
So it's either Johns.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean and we have a John School in London, so.
John School.
A John School. Do you know what that is?
I don't know what that is.
That's a new one. Let's listen.
All right. So that's we want anybody who has been arrested for, I guess, wanting to buy the services of a sex worker, and they've been caught, part of their sentence, so to speak, is they go to a John School where they fill them full of propaganda to try to get them not to buy sex again and see how damaging it is, regardless of the realities or not.
I've never heard of that before. So if you are, first of all, is it a criminal offense to?
It's to communicate for the purposes of buying but it's not illegal to advertise your services, which is really messed up and confusing.
That is really confusing. So
one of the critiques of the law.
To add to the confusion about male versus female, selling to men versus selling to women, and other I guess blurred lines within genders, we'll say. Now we have also a mismatch between whether or not you're allowed to advertise or seek. So the whole thing sounds like it's a bit of a mess. Do you think that your research and other similar research will help to clarify these things for future Canadian politicians?
I'm a quiet little voice, right? I would like to think that the small guy can prevail, but when there's a lot more research out there saying, other things, and they have the money and they have the power, I'm not so optimistic. But in a local policy setting, I would like to think I, could do something with it to inform the public. I mean, one of the things I'd like to do is maybe form a men's mission or something like that, but not specifically trying to save anybody, but just to be a place where guys that are selling sex can go and get the resources they need or information about the resources they need or don't need. Because nowadays, a lot of the guys that I've talked to are all do it online. So there's not like a community of sex workers. So they don't know each other. They can't relate to each other's experiences or not. It's pretty lonely.
So would you say that possibly isolation and even mental health problems will become more of an issue in this group?
There are a few who are on ODSP for mental health, more depression type things, which I'm not sure who isn't depressed anymore in today's society. So I don't want to lump their work or their past into that. But
so one thing that was interesting when you were talking about is did you find, you said that like the difference in clientele, men and women were both. I had two questions, and you can answer them in whatever order you want. But what did you find anything surprising, or what were your results like for sexual orientation among these people?
Okay.
And the second question I was wondering is everyone you interviewed biologically male, or are they just male identified? Like
it's all cis cis males.
Cis males. So would you extend this this research study, or would that be too broad to work at with trans men? And
it's generically put out there. If a trans man wants to come talk to me, I don't have anything that says it has to be a cis male. I'm not entirely sure they exist in London specifically. I think a lot of people migrate to the bigger cities because there's more resources for you there. But that's one thing I've also learned is small cities have sex workers in them. Usually the thought is, Toronto, Vancouver, the big meccas, New York is where the sex work is. And then that's not an issue here in the small town. Every small town has a sex worker somewhere.
Interesting. So you were surprised by just how many there were?
Yeah. I actually started off doing my master's, and we ended up fast tracking because I found so many people to talk to. We weren't expecting so many.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, for your work anyway.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, they're voices that aren't heard, and hopefully by the end of my research, I can.
You can say something authoritative.
Say something.
So because of the lack of a voice that they've had, and I guess while you're digging down into what's happening here, would you say that and I don't want to sound anti-feminist or anything because I'm not, but would you say that there's a mismatch between people's perceptions of what feminism is and what it really stands for?
Oh, God,
I remember Emma Watson's address to the UN was basically all about equality and not about anything. Watson's address to the UN, and she was basically saying that feminist doesn't have to do with women trying to be better than or have power over men in any way. It's just about equality, and in terms of getting those equal rights, we don't want to start to misrepresent or underrepresent anybody. So are you exposing a group of people that is being underrepresented by a very important movement in human rights?
I would say yes. I would like to know why Emma Watson thinks she's a spokesperson for all of women. I know I've read a lot of women critiquing her views.
You mean a multimillionaire white woman from England doesn't know everything about women?
Exactly. Privilege. Yeah. Basically, our conceptualizations of what feminism is individual. It comes from our own exposure to education, the media, whatever. So everybody has their own image of what it is. So there's blurred boundaries. What it really is in the core, I'm not qualified to answer, and I'm not sure anybody really is.
There's probably like an entire field of people like writing books and stuff to figure all that out.
Exactly, and I mean, we have our feminist studies program, and that's what they study. So, I mean, and everybody just has their own opinion on it, and that's what's confusing about it all, because you want everything, to logically just kind of make sense. You want to be able to say something concrete, and one of the things that I keep fighting in my own work and theoretical methods and everything is, what can I really say about anything? And I get it in this like solipsis of, is there real truth and all this kind of mumbo jumbo? And I'm like, wait, no, you're getting distracted. Let's talk to the people.
You're stepping into the humanities at that point.
Exactly. and that's what is kind of the hardest thing is, and it's, we need to talk to the people. And then once we've talked to the people, what do we do with that? What do we do with the fact that we have victims? We have people who are addicts. We have people who just need some money. It's just the job. Yeah. It pays better than McDonald's. It really does. And if you're into sex with random strangers, getting paid $100 to have sex for an hour, it's better than working an 8-hour day.
So I always want to get in the habit of asking this, like, because we're running out of time, and I just wanted to ask you one more question. So if somebody was interested in this topic and somebody wanted to learn more, what direction would you point them in?
I would say definitely contact me, and we can have a long conversation that I can actually, help you find some resources. I would go to Hook Online or Maggie's out of Toronto. They are sex worker-led organizations. The Hook one is actually male sex workers led. And anything you need to know, they basically have there. You have academic articles, you have articles written by sex workers, for sex workers, resources, everything. I mean, in some way, I'm a white male with privilege, right? So there's a part of me that's like, I'm not an authority, but I am because I have privilege. So I would definitely go there first.
All right, Nathan, thank you so much for coming to talk to us. You've really shone a light on something that I imagine many people haven't even thought of, let alone.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure. I don't feel like I shined a light. If not, I just made, hopefully, some people think a little bit more about what you're seeing. So,
well, thank you for doing it.
Thank you, guys.
That's all we got for this week. If you like this episode, share it with someone. Check us all out on Twitter and Facebook. Both you can find through Gradcast Radio. You can go to our website to see more episodes at gradcastradio.ca. And if you want to come on the show and talk about your own research, great line for your CV, go to gradcastradio@gmail.com. The theme is Happy Boy by Kevin MacLeod, and we will see you guys next time.